So it's Christmas, way we can go out and enjoy ourselves. Or not, as the case may be this year, because it's a general election. What a fantastic combination. Lots of people arguing about politics at Christmas. And of course, as soon as the election's over, everybody's going to be arguing about it over the Christmas dinner table. What a fantastic Christmas 2019 is going to be. However, I have archived data on previous general elections, and I thought what I would do this week ahead of the big vote was give you some insight as to what has happened at previous general elections. If you're interested in learning to trade on Betfair, then visit the BetAngel Academy, where you have detailed, structured Betfair trading courses. Or why not visit our website where you can download a free trial of BetAngel Professional, but also visit the forum where you can get detailed images, examples, and downloadable files. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon if you want notification of new videos as they're released. So how fantastic, a general election at Christmas. Everybody loves to talk about politics, don't they? And it doesn't cause any tension or distress to different people. So, you know, politicians have ruined everything else. Why not ruin Christmas as well? So yeah, when they announced that it was going to be a general election at Christmas, it was like, oh no. It's like, great, fantastic. How's that, you know, that's really going to top off Christmas, isn't it? Everybody's going to be arguing in the run-up to the general election at the Christmas party. And then when we get the results of the general election, everybody will be arguing over Christmas as well. What a fantastic start to the next year. Anyhow, it's with us now, so we may as well get on with it. And I've been following political markets on Betfair for some time with the intention of just trying to understand what's going on. Some of the markets have been absolutely massive. And the biggest individual market overall on Betfair was the US presidential election, which turned over £200 million. And the EU referendum market, I think, was about 120 million. So some of these markets can get absolutely massive. And so I've been interested in them for some time, trying to gather data, understand what's going on within the markets. And what I wanted to do with this video really was just give you some idea of what's happened in previous general elections and the markets that I've been looking at and how, you know, certain things have influenced those markets. So I hope that this is useful for you. The first market I ever looked at on Betfair in politics was in 2004, and it was the US presidential race. But of course, the first election that I would have done, therefore, was in 2005. This was still in the Tony Blair era. And when I looked at the markets then and when I look at the markets now, I sort of bring my focus on to like the most seats markets and the overall majority markets. That there seems to be a lot of activity and liquidity there. And as a trader, you need liquidity. Don't confuse volume with liquidity, because volume is how much the market's turned over. Liquidity is how much it's turning over right now. So if you're actively trading a market, you want to be able to get out of a position fairly quickly. And therefore, if there's lots of money being matched at the current price at this current time, that will allow you to do that. So when I say a liquid market, that's what I'm talking about, the ability to exit a position. So I always search for high liquidity markets because they're the ones that means I can take a position, even a speculative one, and if I change my mind, I can just dump it and think, okay, you know, made a mistake there, let's move on. If you're in an illiquid market, you can't do that. If you're going to get out, it will be for a loss, and you'll end up pushing the price against you and taking a bigger loss. So the two markets that I tend to look at are most seats and overall majority. They seem to be the most liquid. And those are the ones that I've gathered data on for a few years and looked at more intensely and actively traded over the years. So the first market that I actively traded was the 2005 general election. That's the one that I gathered data on, started dabbling and having a good look around in. And if we look at the no majority market there was about a 12.5% chance of there being no majority in that particular market. So this was Tony Blair against Michael Howard. And that, you know, there was a reasonable chance of there being no overall majority. But typically it was going to be a Labour government, no overall majority. But as the campaign went on, that chance increased. So that decreased rather to about 2.5%. So basically it was looking less and less likely that there was going to be no overall majority. Now, as the results came in, basically that rallied, but then eventually it just died out. So it was quite a dull election from a betting perspective. There was nothing amazing going on within those particular markets. But if we went forward to 2010, then all of a sudden things look a little bit different. This was the Cameron and Miliband election. And basically, no, it was looking a lot tighter in that particular market. I'll talk about polling in a second because it's important to understand how polls influence the markets and how you would align yourself in terms of the way that the markets work. So we'll talk about polling in a second. But basically, there was the no overall majority was 161. So it looked quite likely. As the campaign went on, it sort of drifted out a bit, but eventually it came sort of straight back in when it was clear that there was going to be no overall majority and a coalition would have to be formed. So the interesting thing about this, and this is why I just slipped in about polling, was that you tend to find that the two states of the market are dictated by two different characteristics. So if you think of the way you trade a traditional sports event, what we're talking about here is all of the polling that takes place in the run-up to the day of the vote is effectively like a pre-off market in horse racing. Every time a poll comes out, the market will react to that. So every time a significant poll comes, whether it's favourable or less favourable, the market just shifts around in response to that. So relatively short and shallow moves, and trends develop and patterns exhibit, and they become reasonably tradable. Now, when we get to the day of the vote, then it's a bit like turning the market in play, because then you're not looking at people's opinion or the opinion on people's opinion, which is what polling is. You're looking actually at the results that come in on that day, and therefore the market's effectively in play. And as results come in, then the market will start discounting that. And we'll talk about something specific in a second so that you can understand what happens on the night of an election, because there is something significant that happens that will influence what you do and if you hold a position or how you choose to do it. So yeah, you tend to find that a lot of the moves take place in the early hours of the morning, sort of 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when the results are coming in, but not always. We'll talk about that in a second. 2015, Cameron was going for a second term, and it looked like it was going to be a relatively tight race. So when we actually looked at the market, we were sort of looking at a chart that sort of went from about 2.5, basically indicating that there was going to be maybe a result that we would expect. But as the campaign went on and the polls converged, then basically no overall majority was getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and eventually traded at 105. But to everybody's surprise, in 2015, they did actually get a majority. So the interesting thing about this, and everybody would have forgotten this by now, but in 2015 there was a big debate about why were the polls so wrong? How was everybody forecasting a hung parliament, and then the Conservatives ended up with a majority? And this is one of the things that you notice through all of the political markets, is that unusual things do seem to happen quite a lot. So, my tendency is to go for the extremities, really, and look for opportunities to lay at low odds or to back at big odds, and to try and trade out from those particular scenarios. So the EU referendum was one of the biggest markets ever, traded 120 million and got matched at 106, I think it was. US presidency market, when Donald Trump was elected, traded 200 million and got matched at tiny odds as well. So never rule out. And in 2015, basically the polls were wrong. Everybody was forecasting a hung parliament, and it looked like that was going to be the case. And actually, the Conservatives got a majority. So wind forward to 2017, and we ended up with this situation where it was expected that there would be a strong Conservative win. But the odds on basically a Conservative win looked very likely. The chance of there being no overall majority looked incredibly unlikely. But what we actually saw during that particular campaign was that the odds on a Conservative win were just drifting gradually as time went on. And the Conservative majority looked like it was almost certain, and then it looked less and less certain as the campaign went on. And as a consequence, we saw the price just continually drift. So I'm going to hold back some information on this for a second to show you what happened next and why as we move on to polling. Because what you tend to find, as I've just mentioned already, is that you can get polls for a long period of time, for the entire term of Parliament. I'm a slight sceptic on polls, because I think depending upon how you sample it, whether it's over the internet, the phone, in person, you'll get different responses because they're different demographics, Some people will not use the internet to give an opinion, and others will quite happily. So it sort of skews them according to different demographics. But what you tend to find overall is that polls tend to give you a feel for where things are going, if not on the exact day. But in 2010, the polls were converging and we ended up with a hung parliament. In 2015, they were converging as well. But in fact, the Conservatives got a small majority in 2015. Excuse me. But that was a bit of a surprise, but you could see that there was a hung parliament likely because of the converging polls. And then in 2017, what we actually saw with the polling was that they were fairly consistent for a period of time until the election was called, and then there was a significant Labour rally. And then we ended up with this situation where the Conservatives ended up with a minority government. So yeah, there was no overall majority on that particular year, but you could sort of see it discounted into the polling at that particular moment in time. So polls do tend to give you a feel for what's happening within that particular campaign at that exact moment. Now, the thing that you need to bear in mind is, as I mentioned before, polling is sort of like the pre-off market, and then the actual day of the results, when the polls are closed, actually will then start to discount all of the information into the market itself. However, the exit polls do have a significant impact as well. So when you look at the exit polls from 2010, 2015, they sort of, and 2017 as well, they tend to be pretty accurate according to what the end result was. Now, of course, I was just saying that in 2015, we had this discrepancy in terms of why were the polls different? Why did they not forecast a Conservative majority when a hung parliament was completely expected? But typically, the exit poll will give you a good indication as to what's going on. So if there's a very short priced favourite somewhere, or something at a very, very large price, and an exit poll comes out and indicates something different, I would tend to go with the exit poll. So it's worth checking out the timing of the exit polls and when they are going to be released, because that will be an opportunity for you to take a position, to exit a position before the poll comes out, or to be the fastest finger to hit the button when the poll is released. So if you've got an open position, you probably would want to close it before the exit poll, or you may want to open a speculative position just before the exit poll is announced. Or you just compete with everybody else. There's no in-play delay on this market. You can just basically jump on it as quickly as you can when you see those exit polls come out. And the reason for mentioning this is when you look at 2017, it looked like the Conservatives were going to get a majority. But when the exit poll came out, the number of seats that it forecast, which were actually quite true to the final total, completely sent the price rocketing out. And you can see that illustrated beautifully on this graph. So you can see it looked like the Conservatives were going to get a majority. Exit poll comes out, price absolutely skyrockets at that particular point in time. And then as all of the other results came in, then it eventually headed to its final destination, as it were. So yeah, polling in the lead up to an election sort of gives you an indication as to what's going on. The exit poll will tell you exactly what is going on, but you've got those two states within the market. And once the exit poll is out and the results start coming in, it'll be the divergence between the two that indicate what the final result will be. So, you know, I would tend to stick to the majority markets, or the no overall majority markets, and the most seats, because they tend to generate quite a bit of liquidity, which is quite useful as well. But you've got three distinctive states within the market that will indicate where your opportunity is, or what will happen as those markets mature into the night. So yeah, I've actually got to be away on the evening of the election, so I may not actually get the chance to trade it, but I will definitely be keeping a close eye on it if I can. And I don't think that I'll have the capacity to be able to trade, because I'll be with my daughter, and this was something that was arranged a long time ago, and when they announced the date of the election, it's like, oh, thanks for that. Not only have you ruined Christmas, you're going to have me checking my phone every 5 minutes when I should be spending some quality time with my daughter. But anyhow, I hope that you are able to do something with that information. I just thought it would be of interest to you, given that it's a topical subject. And I hope that the general election doesn't ruin your Christmas. I'm sure it will ruin a few of them out there. Let's just hope that we don't have to go to the polls again and repeatedly throughout 2020. But yeah, best of luck, whatever you're doing.